when we look at diversity, we speak so often about race and gender and sexual orientation and all of these things. But realistically, what we want is a difference of background and life experience and ways to solve problems. Because if we keep hiring the same person over and over, they're probably going to come with a very similar thought process.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very much, as always, for taking the time to join me. And today I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by entrepreneur, certified change practitioner, TEDx speaker, Avenue Magazine Top 40 Under 40 honoree, and Toast co-founder and CEO April Hicke, who is here to discuss her work in confronting the systems plaguing Women Plus in the tech industry and more. Founded in 2022, Toast has become Canada's first female-focused talent partner aimed at placing women in tech companies and is backed by the federal government to help organisations who have tagged gender diversity to their ESG reporting. Toast has expanded their community to cities such as New York, Los Angeles and Chicago and beyond, bringing Toast chapters to even more women in tech. April is recognised nationally for her transformative leadership and bold approach to growth, having been featured in outlets such as the Globe and Mail, BNN, Bloomberg and Forbes, where she is celebrated for her ability to blend business acumen with social innovation. Known for her exclamation mark personality, I love that quote. April is a serial relationship builder and savvy problem solver who devotes much of her time to coaching emerging leaders. So here's how I heard about Toast. It was through a shared client that I had in 2025, and they were building up a day of development for their staff. And when I went in, he said, and we also have April from Toast coming along. And I was like, fabulous. What does that mean? And he said, well, you know Toast, don't you? And I said, I'm going to sound kind of dumb here. I know what Toast is, but I don't think we're talking about the same thing. And then, so it gave me a wee bit of a brief overview. And then, of course, I just search Toast and then see the incredible work. And some of that makes me feel so, uneducated or uninformed because of such brilliant work that's going on outside. And then other times I'm so enthused by that because I'm thinking there's so much to learn, there's so much going on, and it's absolutely fabulous. So I can't wait to get to talk about that. April, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
That was quite the intro, Gary. Thank you so much.
I absolutely love reading stuff like that out. So we had the absolute pleasure of catching up prior to recording, and everything I said in the bio there, it's almost like it's minimized in a way, because the energy that I felt from the very beginning, even through, and this is quite rare, even through email, even through, the text correspondence that we have, there's just an energy there. And I understand a wee bit of your story, having seen your fabulous TEDx talk, but if you could just take us back to your career in life, to this point, or to the point that you decided we need a Toast in this world.
It's a lot. Well, I'm glad that my exclamation mark personality comes through on my emails as well. Someone once told me recently that I'm the only person she knows who texts the exact same way that I talk. And I was like, I'm going to take that as a compliment.
I think it is a compliment. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, hard to go back all the way to the beginning. It's funny because I've always kind of had an exclamation mark personality. I probably just came out of the womb bouncing around and had a whole bunch of energy. I feel for my parents, they were definitely not equipped to have a child with the energy that I did. And I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 8. Right. My parents, again, and back then, people didn't know what to do. Mostly it was boys who were being diagnosed with ADHD, not really girls. And so in grade 1, they wanted to skip me to grade 3 because I was so often bored in school. And my mom was really worried about me because of my very small stature. She was really worried that I was too small to be moving up 2 grades. Also that I wasn't emotionally mature enough to be doing a big jump like that. And so I was diagnosed with ADHD, also diagnosed as gifted, which basically at that time was just like putting a kid in a box to be like, we don't know what to do with her. We're going to do our best. And they put me in French immersion schooling, trying to really keep me busy and somewhat engaged. But I honestly, Gary, I struggled in school. I struggled to, I don't think, and I'm dealing with this now because I have a 14-year-old and I've been having a lot of conversations with his teacher about my own opinions on the school system and how we teach kids. Cause I just don't think it's how the real world works. And the expectations that we have of children in school are too high. And so, I grew up in a household where I had a parent who battled addiction as well, which was also like this added level of complexity. And so, by the age of 14, I was on my own and I was in foster care and group homes and kind of bouncing between youth shelters. And I never got to finish high school because I had to focus on making money and making my own way. And so I think a little bit of that grit and that adversity at such a young age really defined who I was. But it also gave me, unfortunately, a really big chip on my shoulder as I got older. So some of the jobs that I held when I was younger, which were easy ones to have if you didn't have a high school education, were like being a server or a bartender. I spent many years at Earl's as an Earl's girl. I also think sometimes that gave me basically a sociology degree because you spent so much time with people, really understanding people. And I do love, Arlene Dixon talks about this often, how growing up with an unstable parent really also gives you that level of a sociology degree because you have to tailor different versions of yourself. You don't know what version of your parents you're going to get on that day. So children who grow up in a household that has a lack of control grow up very fond of control and really good at adapting themselves to different situations. And I definitely saw that in myself. I grew up a bit of a chameleon and I could fit in wherever I needed to. And then by the time I became, 24, 25 years old, I recognized that, I wanted something more. Humbly, I definitely felt that I deserved more for my life. And so because I'd been out of school for over 10 years, it's very easy for me to apply to a university as like a mature student and take a course, take a quick test, an aptitude test. And then I was able to go in and do my undergrad in HR at Athabasca University, which was really great. Ended up getting a certificate there, which got me which helped give me a leg up. So meanwhile, while I was kind of working through restaurants and whatnot, I got a job at an airline. And I was in their call center, also doing work on change management I was made it to the change management team, which I thought was very exciting as we implemented a work from home model. This was long before everyone knew the secret that working from home is awesome. We didn't have any tools like we do now. Like we didn't have the digital infrastructure to keep people engaged as well. So it was very much like throwing spaghetti at the wall. It was great pioneering virtual work. But one of the defining moments in my life happened when I was at that airline. And so, I was coming back from my honeymoon. I'm going to get interrupted here by my partner who came to drop off a smoothie.
Oh, you're lucky. You're lucky.
For any partners listening, this is a good thing to do if your wife doesn't go from her office for a while. Anyways, and so, coming back from my honeymoon in Jamaica, I landed in Toronto and there was a full ground stop. Now I'd never worked in an airport before, but I had a pretty good idea of what was going on after a couple of years at the airlines. And if you've ever landed in Canada before, you have to go through customs. And if you go through customs without your baggage, you have to fill out these specific forms. And because of this ground stop, they were just unloading people off planes, but not taking anyone's bags off. So then you had these lineups of like hundreds of people who were all waiting to fill out these forms because they didn't have their baggage with them. And so I got off the plane and it was chaos in the airport, Gary. It was like hundreds of people. There was a couple baggage agents who looked like they were going to cry, like sitting at the desks, and like no direction whatsoever. And so I ran up behind, I actually had my work ID with me. So I threw it around my neck and I was like, how can I help? What can I do? And they had no answer. They were like, I don't know. They're all trying to like process people. Again, there was no direction. So in very April form, I just decided to do something really bold. So I grabbed a megaphone and I climbed onto the counter in the middle of Pearson Airport and I just started yelling at people. I'm like, okay, we're going to form 3 lines here, everyone. Get into a line. And so I'm standing here yelling with this and pointing. And I did it. I corralled over like 400 people and I had very nice, clean lines in front of each of the desks. And I stayed there and I helped hand out these forms to people who were in the line so that they could process quicker. My husband at the time was very irritated with me. He was like, I know you're trying to be a hero right now, but like, I'm fucking exhausted. I want to get out of this airport. Yeah. And so that night, there's like an internal company site for the airline that I worked for. And I had posted a bunch saying I was stranded in Toronto if anyone could help me get home. And someone else had posted they were looking for the crazy yelling airport lady who had taken control. And one of my colleagues responded, based off everything you just described, I would say that was probably April Hicke. Yeah. And so if you fast forward a couple of years, I was applying for this job at PwC, which I had no idea what it was, didn't know it was one of the obviously the world's biggest consulting and accounting firms. And they typically only hire like CPA grads from University of Waterloo. And there was a woman there who was building a brand new team focused on virtual work, which I actually had a great experience in. And instead of looking at my resume and being like, oh, she has no high school. She does not have an undergrad. She does not have a CPA. We're not going to look at her. She was like, bring her in for an interview. She's got a different background. And in the interview, I told that story of taking control in the airport because they had asked me something along the lines of like, talk to us about how you handle ambiguity. And I was like, well, I grab a megaphone and I'll just like climb on a counter if I don't know if I can help in any way. And she knew in that moment, she's like, I have to hire the crazy yelling airport lady. And honestly, Gary, that job changed the whole course of my life. So someone seeing, past the bullet points on my resume and choosing to look at, the passion that I carried and the resourcefulness and the drive to figure things out. She opened this unbelievable door. I was promoted 5 times in 4 years in being at PwC because I did see things differently. And I think that role and that company was really helped me understand diversity in hiring people from outside the box. When we look at diversity, we speak so often about race and gender and sexual orientation and all of these things, but realistically what we want is a difference of background and life experience and ways to solve problems. Because if we keep hiring the same person over and over, they're probably going to come with a very similar thought process. And so, leaving there, I went to a bank. After that, I was director of product ops at a bank here in Alberta. And he was even in that role where, my co-founder at the time, we were just friends. And she kept coming to me. She was seeing similar problems in the hiring process. She was at a different bank. And she's like, I'm going to start a company. And I was like, I think you need me to join you. I was like, I feel like, because she was very, very technical. And I was like, I'm very people. She's very technical. And I had to ask her like 4 times before she agreed to let me come in. But I was like, I want to solve for this problem too. I've seen it firsthand. I've also luckily benefited from someone looking outside of the box and making sure that they had diversity in their hiring. Her name is Melissa Lasanti, who hired me at PwC. And I give her a shout out all the time because she really pioneered that way of thinking for so many people within an organization that, it's a 100-year-old audit firm. And they're one of our clients now, actually, at Toast, which is very exciting. We do a lot of hiring for them now. But I think it's something that, changed that whole experience. Being hired by PwC just rewired the way I thought and opened all these doors for me because I shouldn't, like, statistically speaking, I should not be where I am right now. Coming from foster care or a home that I came from, I shouldn't be the CEO of like a 7-figure business right now. And so I often credit someone thinking outside the box to my success.
It's absolutely incredible, isn't it? Incredible, fantastic, and a wee bit scary that if you just hadn't have been at that particular juncture in your life and with your Melissa, was it you said?
Mm-hmm.
with
Yep.
Melissa, and Melissa being where she was in her career and her life to
Yep.
say, but even the step before that, April, as well, how you managed to navigate through the admin type of the process. I teach an undergraduate class at the U of C, and it's on career strategies, and there's a lot of times where they're just blocked before they even there's not a human eyeball on anything they're doing.
Yes.
And then, like, I understand that sitting across from you on the table, it would just be an incredible conversation. And whether
Oh
you
God.
get the role or whether you don't get the role, they would have an experience
Yes.
anyway to say, right, okay, I understand that. And it's that trying to take the flukiness away
Yes.
from it and have it more intentional. Was that part of your purposeful thinking at the beginning?
Yeah, I think too. I'm glad you just talked about that barrier as well, because even just getting in front of someone to be able
Yeah.
to tell that story is such a barrier. And I was very lucky. I actually knew I had a friend who knew a friend at PwC who took my resume and brought it to someone. And that's actually what we get to
Right.
do at Toast now
Oh,
is and so a great example, another client of ours, huge company here in Calgary called Zayzoon. I'm going to give them a shout out. They are hiring right now for like a marketing and event specialist. And got all the way at the end with two candidates. They offered someone. This woman had two offers, and she ended up taking the other one. And Zayzoon said, "You know what? We're going to start from scratch." And I know another candidate, and this woman has worked in the court systems forever. She has no events and marketing experience, but she has taken a certificate in like digital marketing. So she doesn't have the hands-on experience, but she has transferable skill sets. So I
yes.
called the CEO, Tate. I'm not sure if you know him. You should definitely have him on this podcast too. But Tate is brilliant, and his founder story is very impressive as well.
Fabulous.
But I called him and I was like, "Listen, I know that she doesn't have the experience that you want on this job description, but I think you should meet her. And here's why I think you should meet her. I think that she's got potential." And he said, "Okay, cool, bring her in. I understand. I'm going to meet her first before I send her to the hiring manager." And he met her. She went through the process. She is presenting her case study today at noon. Actually, she's in the final interview. And
Wow.
so I think when we have people that, we can have these conversations with CEOs or hiring managers to get them to think outside the box and outside of these like just these like bullet points that we think that we need when we're hiring roles. We actually don't need them. What we need is that grit, that resourcefulness, the potential. And I think slowly people are starting to understand that as well. More and more hiring managers are starting to understand that. And I feel very grateful that my job is so purposeful and that I get to connect with so many different hiring managers and help them understand why it's important that we think outside of these like check mark boxes, so that we actually can give people the opportunities for that. So this is why I tell people recruiters kind of get a bad rep
Yeah.
sometimes. And I'm going to do like a little mean girls drop. We're not real recruiters. We're like cool recruiters. But it is important sometimes if you are looking for specific roles, if you can have that little leg up, and we're very blessed that we get to do that at Toast for people.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that about recruiters. I've dealt with recruiters for many, many, many years, decades, in fact. And you're right, they do get a bit of a bad rap. And then
Yeah.
one of the more common positive experiences I would have with a recruiter is someone who has a personality similar to yours, or an
Mhm.
and or the enthusiasm and the experience and the understanding of that, and more importantly the relationships with the
Yeah.
people in the organizations. So when you don't have that, or you don't have key elements of that, it ends up becoming this, as we say here, cookie cutter approach, where they
Yeah.
say, we have this role, I'll send you the resume, if you can update your profile, we'll present you, if you get
Yep.
selected, we'll give you some information. So one potential fear, or actually, do you know what, one direct experience I've had is I've had really positive experiences with that, like I said, and then that person goes away. And then when you try and have a similar experience, as a consulting project manager for many, many years, I
Mhm.
would, kind of go back into the pool every 6, 12, 18 months or so. And then that person's no longer there and the experience is wholly different. So
Yeah.
if you're directly involved in that process right now, April, how are you future proofing Toast that if/when April is going to decide to do something else at some point in the future, that people still have the same experience with toast.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I can't imagine a toast without me. I do have a really strong team. I actually have 9 employees now, which is just like
Wow.
absolutely wild. I think a lot of it is, doing things like this and being able to spread our message. Cause I think once, and I'm glad you mentioned my TED talk too, because I've had a lot of people approach me afterwards to be like, wow, I didn't realize how many places that I was putting people in a box. And so when I think about the work that we have to do at Toast, it's every day in the interactions that I have with my clients. But I think things like this, or this is why you so often see me on a stage, or why the Globe and Mail calls me for my opinion on things, because I think it's important that we share this message, especially as we move forward full speed with AI in this world. There's a couple things that worry me. One in particular being that we're leaning too much on these machines and less on like human interaction. And I'm seeing people go one of two ways. They're either doubling down on human interaction and connectivity, or they're doubling down on AI. And for those companies that are doing that, it still really worries me. The teams that are building AI right now do not necessarily reflect the communities that they serve. And that in itself is a problem. An interesting statistic that I'm standing on a soapbox about lately has been that 70% of the roles that are identified and have been identified to be most likely to be automated in the next 20 years are typically held by women. And we are not involved in the development of this as well. And so I've been really focused on upskilling women in AI, getting women like comfortable with using AI. I think it sounds very scary. I am not a technical person at all, but I was able to like log on to Replit a couple weeks ago, and I built myself an app in like 4 hours that solved a problem for my recruiters that saved them all 5 hours a week. And so, and I tell this story because I want more women to get comfortable with this. And the more comfortable we get, the more likely we are to have conversations with hiring managers about our skill sets and the things that we do. And so I think a piece of, thinking of what a world looks like without April and Toast is just me doing this work every day to continue to share this message. So that it's not just me shouting it from the rooftops, hopefully.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating. And that's such a damning statistic that 70% of those roles are currently held by females, and females are not involved in the solution. As AI becomes a giant step forward, it's not going away. It's going to be it is part of our lives already today. That's the giant step forward. And then it feels like, via that statistic alone, that we're taking a massive step backwards and saying, have you not learned anything from anything that has happened in the past? Look at history. So how do we get beyond that? Is there a fear from women to say, this is too much. I don't understand it. By the way, nobody understands it. But or is it it's just not that interesting, or they have enough going on? Have you seen a trend or some sort of thing?
I think it's very multifaceted. I think that I actually had a conversation with one of my team members just on Monday when we got back to work, and I was going over her job description again, and it was like, if you don't know how to do something, you have to tell me that. And I don't know why that's such a fear for women still sometimes. I think it's hard when we are not heavily represented in our classrooms, in the schooling that we're taking, in the jobs that we're in. I'm in a team of all women. We only have women at Toast. Not by design, not because I discriminate against men. The women were just the best ones to hire. That's what I'm going to say. But, I think that it's hard for us when we only represent between 11 and 22% of the industry, depending on what province that you're in, for us to go forward and we want to be seen as capable. We want to be seen as that we have earned our spot where we are, but it's really hard when you're underrepresented. And I think it creates this like bit of insecurity within you. And so when I think about, why we have this membership. So obviously, primarily, we're a recruitment platform. We have a really cool open website open platform rather, that's coming out at the end of this month, prior to this, only our members who were paying $29 a month had access to all of the upskilling that we had and access to career coaches and things of the sort. And we've now opened it up as of January 27th to every woman in tech across Canada. And so when I look at why we need this, when we launched primarily this recruitment platform, it was like, we need to get women in these roles, but also oftentimes women are the lonely only, and women need support. They need a village. This is why we have this here, and why we have, our Slack channels where women can share their experiences. We also have like a Glassdoor, but it's called Toastdoor, where people can share stories about companies that aren't that great. Why we have access to HR lawyers, career coaches. There's often this like huge barrier to access in terms of like financial barriers. Career coaches cost a lot of money. Yeah. And so this is why our membership and our community is also such a big piece of it, because we need to ensure that women have that confidence. You and I probably know this stat very well, but women wait until they hit 9 out of 10 pieces on a job description to apply. And men apply when they have 4 out of 10. Yeah. And Gary, I'm going to give you some Toast secrets right now. The emails that we get from men are like, the audacity blows my mind. We had a role posted recently, and companies come to us when they don't get enough women applying. Yeah. So one of our clients is an NHL team, and they don't have a lot of women that apply. In the NHL, specifically on like their data and analytics team, there's just not, women don't want to go work in these sports teams because obviously it's a very bro-y culture already. Yeah. And so one of these we have 2 NHL teams that are our clients at Toast, and one of them is in Calgary. And and I work really closely with the COO. They're amazing. The team's great, whatever. So we're working right now with them on hiring a role. And a man applied, and we have, barrier, like as you apply, it'll ask you for your gender. And within like 36 to 48 hours, it does send an automatic decline to be like, hey, sorry, because they're not going to pay us a recruiter fee to get more men in there. They already have men applying. They're paying us to help them source the best women talent. And so it's not shade to the men that we're not giving them this opportunity. Our client just does not want to pay to see more men. Yeah. And so this man got a decline. And he replied back to us, and he was like, I suggest you look at us again. He was like, I have this experience, I have this experience, I have this experience. And we got the email, and we're laughing because we're like, a woman would never reply to a recruiter and say, I suggest you look at this again. The audacity, though, that men have, women just don't have that. And I wish sometimes we did. I would love to see a woman come back to me and be like, no, look at me again. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to look at her again. I totally would. But we need, and this is why it's like, it's ingrained in our society. Because when I tell these stories of the emails that we get from men, we had another man reply once, Gary, who just wrote back, he got the auto decline, and he wrote back, your loss.
I've seen some of the things that you've posted online, either men or women, basically just bashing the company, bashing the style, bashing your persona.
Did you see the woman that I posted in November? Because she was so upset that we showed midriffs on and I just wish you could see this picture behind me here. It was in the Globe and Mail, and you can totally see my midriff in it. But she was like, that is not professional. And I replied to her that internalized misogyny is exactly everything. The fact that my midriff is showing does not diminish my ability to do my job or does not make me any more or less professional based off how I'm presenting myself. And that internalized misogyny is everything that we fight against. And so we do like sharing our hate mail that we get often. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know any woman who would reply to a recruiter and just write, your loss. But I wish more women would. I think I was like, wow, that guy's got a lot of confidence. Good for him.
Yeah. Or he's really pissed off and someone's getting it. Simple as that. And it's so fascinating because as I mentioned, the undergrad class that I teach, and I say a whole version of some of the items that you've discussed today, April, and I'm specifically talking to the women to saying, it's a job description is a wish list. They are the perfect,
Totally.
ideal candidate, has all 12 of these things.
Totally.
If you think that you could do that role, if it's exciting to you, and if you in some way can fashion your resume, your cover letter, and an in, you apply for that job. The worst thing, no one's going to come and knock on your door and say, get outside here and just put a big custard pie in your face. The,
100%.
the worst you're going to get
You
is either
have,
no. Sorry.
you have to go after it. Even at the
Exactly.
bank,
Yeah.
I got the role as director of product ops. They wanted 10 years of experience. I had 2.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't care, I'm going to apply. And I applied. And then I went and messaged the VP on LinkedIn. And I was like, listen, I know I don't have 10 years of experience. I just applied for your job posting. I have 2 years. I'm coming from PwC. I'm smart. I'm strong. I'm ambitious. I think you should meet me. And she was like, great, look for it. She replied to me and was like, look forward to seeing your application. And then I got an interview and then I ended up getting the job.
Yeah.
And so, but I understand that not all women are like that. I am like a dog with a bone. If I want something and you're trapped in a room with me, you're probably not leaving until like
You get what you want.
yeah, totally. But I often coach women through that. I'm like, come with that confidence. Even the woman who's applying for the role, who's doing her final case study with Zayzoon today, I was practicing with her yesterday because she asked if she could run through the presentation with me, and I made time for her, and sat there. And she was like, "Any feedback?" I'm like, "Be more confident." That's it.
Yeah.
Just like be really strong and believe in yourself, because all of us, we have that one core story too that really defines who we are and how we approach things. And for me, mine is often that WestJet story.
Yeah.
I tell that story often because to me, it encompasses, the way I approach problems, which is like, I will jump into them head on without even thinking, the way I grabbed that megaphone that day.
Yeah.
And so I ask candidates often, like, what is your core story? What is the story you can take to all of your interviews? And maybe fine, you didn't jump onto a countertop in Pearson Airport,
Yeah.
but you have done something somewhere in your life. I'm going to give one more example. I hired a woman once at PwC who I was hiring for a very client-facing role, and I needed someone who would go above and beyond for like anything. It was a client-facing role, and she used to work. And again, I hired outside the box at PwC often. Her name is Serena Jetha. I'm going to give her a huge shout out here because now she's a senior manager of like risk at PwC. But when I hired her, she worked the front desk at a hotel in the Northeast in Calgary.
Right.
And she was telling me in the interview process how she had a client who came back all the time, and their rule was not to keep clients' credit cards on file. They had a rule against it. They didn't want it. This client was there every single week, and he was like, listen, Serena, I don't want to keep giving. I just want to come in and I want to check in. This is what I want. I spend thousands and thousands here every day. She decided she took it upon herself to use her empowerment to be like, you know what, I'm going to override this rule and I'm going to do this for this client because it's going to keep us, it's going to do customer loyalty. It's going to keep this guy happy. It's going to drive revenue, all of these things. And she told me that story in the interview, and I was like, you're hired. I was like, you're hired. That's exactly the type of story. And so again, hers was not standing on a megaphone, but that story to me shows the way that she thinks, and immediately hired. And look at this woman now. She went from being at a front desk at a hotel, and now she's like senior manager running all of risk at one of the world's biggest consulting firms.
Incredible.
So I think everyone needs to dig in and figure out what is that story that you carry, because everyone has one.
Definitely. Absolutely. What are the major barriers that you've experienced since you founded Toast back in 2022 thus far?
Oh God, a million. I don't know. The fact that I don't know what I'm doing most days. Yeah, I would say there's obviously a lack of support for women founders. There's also, unfortunately, in tech, this notion that unless you've raised VC funding, you're not like a real tech company, which I find to be a very silly and funny barrier, because I have more profit, more revenue, and more growth and traction than like a lot of other companies that have raised funding. And so I would say resisting that VC trap has been definitely something that's interesting as well. Also, only 1.9% of women founders ever achieve $1 million in revenue. And so even just like hitting that number myself shows like how much you really have to break through things, I think. there's a lot of pushback too, obviously, when you look at like the administration down south that just came in and made D&I initiatives or anything to do with gender equity illegal within that country is like wild. And so I think there's a lot of geopolitical barriers that we've had to push through. We were looking a lot last year and expanding into the US, as you mentioned during my intro, and LA, New York, and Chicago, both, like all three of those, still Democratic states where we have like a lot of support still. And we have a partnership right now that we're working with Harvard, and I was in Boston in the fall, and sitting there, they still have like the dean of gender equity, and I got to sit down with her and meet her and like talk to her about how they just won their court case against the Trump administration and continue to do what they're doing. And she was like, yeah, we won for now. But it's really nice and encouraging to see that those barriers, which some days do feel very strong and very huge, there's still a lot of people that are like pushing through and understand that you cannot have a workforce of the future strategy without a gender equity strategy, especially if you're building tech products for everyone. So I would say that's probably over the past 2 years been the biggest barrier to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. As you know, April, this is called the Best You podcast. This is where I take the opportunity to ask each of the guests, what's one regular practice that you employ to give April the best opportunity to be the best version of yourself, apart from the smoothies from your partner?
I actually call it a self-care pie. I'm sober, so I don't drink alcohol. I haven't drank alcohol in almost 11 years now. And I think sobriety changed my whole life, changed my outcome on life, like my outlook on life rather. And I think that's a big piece and practice that I have is just like not drinking has really changed things for me. In my like self-care pie that I speak about often though, I have to move my body. So like I said, I had a workout right before we jumped on this. Shout out to my trainer who tries to kill me 3 times a week, which I think is really important for my mental health as well. And with that, I've actually had the same psychologist since 2016, 10 years. It's our 10-year anniversary, her and I. And I think it's really important that we take care of our bodies because I can't show up every day in the way that I'm required to and show up as my best self for my team and my kids and my partner and everyone in the community that looks up for me if I'm also not taking care of myself. So I think for the best me, again, it's like treating my body and talking to myself the way I would a young child, really. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. April, where can people find out more about you and about Toast?
Yeah, definitely on LinkedIn. You guys search me up as April Hicke. I'm posting regularly about where we are, what we're doing, and our new things coming out. But also, if you go to trytoast.ca, you can jump in. If this is after January 27th, our portal will be live as well for you to go through, click around and see all of the resources we have available for women in tech, as well as add your name to our talent pool, because that is the first place our recruiters go when they are hiring for any of our clients. So like fill out your profile there if you are looking for work, explain what you're looking for, and hopefully we can help you find your dream role.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. April, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you very, very much for everything that you're doing for women in tech and industry in general. And please keep doing what you're doing. I'd love to continue this conversation at some point down the line.
Great. Thanks for having me, Gary.